and gave you silence. No replies, no recognition, no praise. And at first, it hurts because we're human and we naturally crave to be seen, heard, acknowledged. We want our effort to matter. We want someone to notice how far we've come, how much we've sacrificed, how deeply we've been grinding. But instead of applause, we get empty rooms. Instead of cheers, we get closed doors. In that moment, the one where the world gives you silence is when most people start to shrink. They start to question if they're enough. They start to wonder if maybe the world's silence means they should stop. But the truth is far deeper, far more powerful. That silence is not your end. It's the beginning of something extraordinary. You see, rejection is loud. It says you're not wanted. But silence says, let's see what you do when no one is watching. That's a challenge, not a punishment. It's the universe pulling back to see what you're made of when the spotlight fades. Anyone can be great when they're getting likes, shares, and pats on the back. Anyone can stay motivated when the room is full of claps and compliments. But true greatness is built in the quiet. True confidence is born when no one is saying your name, and you still show up with fire in your chest and purpose in your steps. Silence is the proving ground. It's where strength is forged and resilience is carved into your bones. Most people misunderstand silence. They think it means failure. They think it's rejection. They think their dreams are being ignored or that their effort isn't being seen. But what they don't realize is that silence is often the space between planting the seed and seeing the harvest. Just because the world isn't clapping now doesn't mean the impact isn't coming. Just because they're not validating you doesn't mean you're not valuable. The ones who break through are the ones who understand that the absence of noise isn't the absence of growth. It's the necessary condition for it. And here's the real test. Can you continue to show up, stay committed, stay consistent, even when the room is empty? Can you give your all to a dream that no one else sees but you? Can you stay hungry even when the world goes quiet? That's where the strong separate from the weak. That's where dreams either fade or sharpen into something unbreakable. It's easy to show up when you're being seen, but can you show up when no one's watching? When no one's cheering, when no one even knows your name? If you can, then you are already ahead of 99% of people, because most give up when the noise stops. Silence also forces you to look inward. When you're not distracted by opinions and applause, you're left with your own truth. You're left with your purpose, your why, your discipline. And that's when your foundation becomes solid, because you're not doing it to please anyone. You're doing it because you believe in it. You're building something so strong that it doesn't need approval to survive. That silence gives you clarity. It forces you to strip away the need for recognition and stand tall on self-belief. It challenges your ego, breaks down your insecurity, and demands that you rise on your own 2 feet. So the next time you're met with silence, don't beg for noise. Don't chase after claps. Don't water yourself down just to be seen. Let the silence stretch. Let it test you. Let it sharpen you. Because every great story starts in the quiet, before the crowd, before the recognition, before the world catches up. They gave you silence, not to stop you, but to prepare you. Not to hurt you, but to harden you. That silence is not rejection. It's a challenge. And it's your moment to rise, ChatGPT said. They told you to wait, to prove yourself, to be patient for the applause. But what they didn't tell you is that waiting for validation is the quickest way to destroy your potential. When you spend your life chasing the approval of others, you hand them the keys to your destiny. Every time you hesitate because someone hasn't praised you yet, every time you shrink because someone hasn't acknowledged your effort, you give away your power, and eventually you start building your identity around how others respond to you. That's not purpose. That's dependency. And dependency will drown your greatness before it ever has the chance to rise. You were not built to beg for recognition. You were not put here to perform for claps. Your worth is not tied to how loud people cheer for you. The real ones, the ones who go beyond what's expected, the ones who break ceilings, the ones who rewrite legacies, they don't move based on feedback. They move based on fire. Their inner conviction is louder than the world's silence. They don't sit around waiting for someone to tell them they're enough. They decide that they're enough and they act on it. Not once, not when it's easy, but every single day. They don't need noise. They don't need followers. They don't need applause. They need the goal, the reason, the mission. And that's what keeps them going when everything else goes quiet. Validation is addictive because it feels good. It feeds your ego. It gives you that quick hit of, I matter. But it's empty calories for your soul. It doesn't last. It doesn't satisfy. The moment people stop clapping, you feel lost again. You start questioning your path. You start wondering if you're doing something wrong, not because you are, but because you've been trained to equate applause with progress. That's the trap. And that's why so many talented people quit too soon. They don't see the likes, the views, the praise. And so they think their work is meaningless. But the truth, most of the world's greatest movements were started in silence. The most life-changing ideas were born in obscurity. Validation didn't build them. Action did. If you're always looking outward for proof that you're on the right path, you'll miss the signs that are already inside you. You'll ignore your own instincts. You'll forget your original reasons. And the more you chase validation, the more you twist yourself into something you're not, just to earn the approval of people who probably aren't even living their truth. But when you act from a place of purpose instead of a place of permission, everything changes. You stop caring who sees you and start caring about what you're building. You stop waiting and start doing. You stop pleasing and start producing. And the momentum that comes from action, that's something no outside praise can ever replicate. People will ignore you until they can't. That's how it works. They stay silent while you're grinding. They look the other way while you're learning, and then suddenly they'll all pretend they believed in you once your results are undeniable. That's why you can't let their validation be your fuel, because they only show up after you've succeeded, not before, not when you needed it, not when you were struggling in the dark. So why build your identity around people who only appear when it's convenient for them? Build in silence, grow without applause, and let your action be so loud that one day they'll regret ever staying silent. You will never regret moving forward. You'll never regret showing up, grinding, building, even when nobody claps. But you will regret the days you waited for someone to say, go, because no one is coming to save you. No one is coming to hand you permission. No one will see the full picture like you do. So take the first step, take the second, and then keep moving, not for validation, not for recognition, but because action builds what applause never could. They told you to keep talking, to keep explaining, to keep defending your dreams to people who never really listened. But here's the hard truth. They were never meant to understand, because the ones who talk the loudest often do the least. And the ones who doubt you the most are usually too afraid to chase something of their own. You don't owe them a breakdown of your blueprint. You don't need to shout your plans from the rooftops hoping they'll finally believe you. That's not your job. Your job is to build, to get so locked in, so consumed with becoming the version of yourself you know you're capable of, that you stop caring who's watching. You stop caring who's clapping. You stop caring who gets it. The work will explain everything when the time is right. And when it does, the same silence they gave you will be the same silence they choke on, because your results will be louder than anything they could have said. Every day that you wake up and choose to push forward, even when nobody notices, is a day you're writing the truth with action. You don't need a microphone when you have momentum. You don't need validation when you have vision. Words can be twisted, misunderstood, ignored, but consistency can't. Discipline can't. A transformed life, that's undeniable. When people see the shift in how you walk, how you speak, how you carry yourself, it speaks louder than any motivational quote ever could. You don't need to convince people you're changing. You don't need to force them to acknowledge your grind. Just become. Let your evolution be so clear, so powerful that it leaves no room for debate. Let the grind become your response. Let the results tell your side of the story. The louder you become in action, the quieter your critics get in disbelief. People love to talk about potential, but potential means nothing without execution. You can have all the dreams, all the plans, all the talent in the world, but if you're not moving, not building, not showing up, then it's just noise. The world isn't changed by potential. It's changed by proof. And the only way to create proof is through work. Real, raw, painful, often invisible work. The kind of work that no one sees because it's done behind the curtain in silence with no applause. That's where transformation happens. Not in the highlight reels, not in the grand speeches, but in the hours that don't get posted. So if you're not getting attention, good. That means you're free to focus, free to grow, free to lock in without distraction. Use that silence. Let it push you into deeper purpose, not self-doubt. Your words can inspire for a moment, but your actions can inspire for a lifetime. The most powerful people in this world didn't build influence by being the loudest. They built it by being undeniable. They kept showing up. They kept creating. They kept improving. And one day, their results screamed so loudly that the world couldn't help but listen. That's the kind of volume you want. Not noise rooted in insecurity, but power rooted in truth. Every time you choose work over explanation, you are choosing mastery. You are choosing legacy, because people might forget what you said. They might even ignore what you meant, but they will never forget what you built in front of their eyes. And when the work is real, you don't have to prove anything. You don't have to scream, "Look at me." The results will grab attention on their own. You won't need to chase respect. It will chase you. That's the beauty of doing the work in silence. It builds an energy so strong that even the ones who tried to mute you can't help but feel your presence. And it's not about revenge. It's not about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. It's about standing 10 toes down in your truth, trusting your vision even when nobody else sees it. Because the ones who show up daily without praise, without recognition, are the ones who will always outlast the ones who only showed up for the spotlight. There's a moment in the journey where the noise fades, where people stop asking, where the attention goes elsewhere. And in that moment, most people fold. They think the dream is dead. But that moment, that's the most powerful one of all, because that's where you get to decide whether your dream was fueled by validation or by vision. If you can keep working in that silence, if you can stay committed when there's no applause, then you've already won. Because now your drive is pure. Your actions are coming from a deeper place, a place that can't be shaken by criticism or applause, a place that only answers to purpose. And once you reach that level, there's no need to speak. The work will always say more than your words ever could. ChatGPT said, they'll never see your beginning. They'll never witness the nights when you cried in frustration, the mornings when you had to drag yourself out of bed to chase a dream that felt so far away it almost hurt. They'll never understand what it took for you to keep going when nothing around you made sense. That's because transformation doesn't happen when the cameras are rolling or when the audience is watching. It happens in the silence in the background when no one's paying attention. It happens when the world goes quiet and you're left alone with your doubts, your fears, and your desire to rise. It happens in those moments when you've got every reason to quit, but you don't. You choose to keep pushing. You choose to trust the process even when the results haven't shown up yet. That's the space where greatness begins to grow, not under spotlights, but under pressure. There's a sacredness in solitude that most people run from. They fear being alone with their thoughts, alone with their process, because silence forces you to confront the truth. There's no performance in silence. There's no pretending, just you and the work, just you and the vision. And in that raw space, the layers that don't belong start to fall off. The masks, the ego, the excuses, they can't survive there. That's why so few ever become what they're meant to be, because they avoid the silence that transformation requires. But for those who embrace it, who learn to operate without attention, without praise, without external motivation, something powerful begins to shift. You stop relying on the world to tell you who you are. You stop looking outward and begin building inward. And it's there, deep in the discomfort, that real progress takes root. The silence is where habits are born, where consistency is forged. You want to always feel inspired. You want to always feel motivated, but the silence demands that you show up anyway. Not because someone's watching, but because you made a promise to yourself. This is where you begin to rewire your identity. When you choose discipline over desire, when you stay locked in, not because you feel like it, but because it's who you've decided to become. And that decision, made again and again in the quiet, reshapes your future. You stop chasing highs and start creating structure. You stop searching for motivation and start building momentum. That kind of transformation doesn't come in a single moment. It comes from thousands of small, unseen decisions, ones no one will clap for, but that build the kind of character no one can deny. The irony is that the silence that once felt like a punishment eventually becomes your power. While others need constant stimulation and external motivation to keep going, you've built your strength in solitude. You've trained yourself to thrive when the world offers nothing in return. And that resilience, that quiet intensity becomes your edge. You no longer depend on recognition to feel worthy. You no longer fear rejection because you've already endured the most brutal silence of all, the one inside your own mind. And you didn't let it stop you. You rose anyway. You kept going. And that's why your growth is different. That's why your foundation is unshakable, because you didn't build it for applause. You built it for purpose. Most people want the spotlight before they've earned the stripes. They want to be celebrated before they've done the hard work. But the truth is, no amount of exposure can replace the value of silent preparation. You don't want recognition you haven't prepared for, because if you receive it too soon, it will expose what you haven't built. That's why the silence is a gift. It gives you time to get solid. It gives you space to fail, to fall, to rebuild without the weight of judgment. The silence is where you prepare for the moment the world finally takes notice. So when that moment comes, you're not surprised. You're ready. You're not scrambling to catch up. You've already been grinding. You've already been building. And now the results speak for themselves. The world doesn't reward potential. It rewards proof. And proof is built in the process. Not the process people see, but the one they never will. The hours no one talks about, the sacrifices no one applauds. That's the real story. That's the real grind. Because when the lights do eventually come on and the attention finally finds you, you won't be performing. You'll just be continuing what you started long ago in the dark. That's the kind of growth that lasts. The kind that doesn't fade when the noise stops, because it was never built on noise to begin with. It was built on silence. ChatGPT said, you will be tested not once, not twice, but over and over again by life, by people, by silence. And the biggest test of all is not what happens to you, but how you respond to it. When they ignore you, when they doubt you, when they dismiss your name like it never meant anything, your first instinct will be emotional. You'll want to lash out. You'll want to prove them wrong through rage, through ego, through shouting your worth at the top of your lungs. But the problem is, emotion is temporary. Emotion is explosive, but it burns out fast. It might feel satisfying in the moment, but it won't build anything that lasts. That's why the truly powerful don't answer with noise, they answer with discipline. They answer with quiet consistency, with steady focus, with action so calculated they don't need to scream. Because screaming may get attention, but discipline gets results. The emotional path is always easier. It's easier to complain than to commit. It's easier to rant than to reform, but it's also the path that leaves you stuck, drained, and hollow. When you let your emotions lead, you burn energy that should have gone towards your growth. You lose focus. You hand your power over to situations and people who never deserved it, and every second you spend reacting emotionally is a second stolen from the work that could have pushed you forward. You see, greatness isn't built in emotional reactions. It's built in emotional control. It's built when you master the art of pausing, of breathing, of choosing a response that moves you forward, not one that drags you back into the same cycles that held you down for years. You don't rise by being louder. You rise by being wiser. The disciplined mind is dangerous because it doesn't flinch. It doesn't react. It responds. It calculates. It strategizes. When you build your mindset around discipline, you're no longer thrown off by setbacks. You no longer crumble when someone says you're not enough. You use it. You turn that silence, that rejection into focus. You put your head down, not to hide, but to work. You train in the dark. You sharpen your skills. You build something real. And while the world is busy talking, doubting, dismissing, you're evolving. You're preparing. You're becoming. And when you finally step forward, when the results begin to show, they won't know how to respond because you never gave them drama, only development. The difference between emotion and discipline is that one is loud, the other is lethal. Emotion may create noise, but discipline builds weapons. Discipline is when you show up whether or not you feel like it. Discipline is waking up early when you're tired, saying no to distractions when they're tempting, staying committed to the plan even when it feels like nothing is working. That kind of energy doesn't come from motivation, it comes from decision. The promise you make to yourself, and you keep it even when the feelings fade. And that's what separates the successful from the stuck. The ability to execute consistently in silence. That's the real power. That's how you answer when the world stops believing in you. You can't live your life needing to prove your worth to people who never cared in the first place. You prove your worth by walking it, by becoming it. You let the results speak. You let your work ethic echo in places your voice never reached. That's the energy that turns doubters into spectators. And you don't do it to show off. You do it because you've shifted. You've reached a level where discipline runs your life, not emotion. And from that place, you're no longer looking for revenge. You're too focused on building a future that makes your past irrelevant. That doesn't mean you forget the pain. They gave you silence and that hurt. But you chose not to carry that pain into every room you enter. You chose to use it, to mold it, to turn it into something productive. Eventually, you realize the greatest revenge is not proving them wrong with emotion. It's proving yourself right with action. The ones who rise are the ones who stay calm in the fire. They don't need to throw their pain at the world to be seen. They channel it, they refine it, and they use it to construct something that stands long after the moment is gone. It's not easy. It requires daily commitment, mental toughness, and the willingness to be misunderstood. But if you can stay grounded, if you can stay focused, if you can keep moving, when everything in you wants to scream or quit, that's where your life begins to shift. Not through explosive moments, but through disciplined momentum. And that kind of shift, that's something no one can take from you.